Another edition of the SpinSheet Happy Hour. Tonight's episode is on racing couples, and I got to tell you, this is going to be kind of fun. I met all the racing couples in the green room. They're all standing by right now. This will be entertaining. I can guarantee it. We are pushing the envelope of the technology tonight, and that is we are at our limit for number of guests. So we've got 4 couples plus Molly plus me. So anyway, we're going to have to break this up in a couple of stages, but more about that in a second. For right now, I am going to just, of course, say thank you to our sponsor, Quantum Sales. Without Quantum, we can't do this, and so we want to, make sure we give a shout out to them and to basically say, when you get a chance. It's sponsors like Quantum and all the advertisers in SpinSheet that make us possible. We are a 100% advertiser-supported magazine, and without their support, we can't bring you this programming. So please be sure to thank our sponsors and obviously give them some business as well. All right, enough of the business, and I'm going to bring Molly on. Hey, Molly.
Hey, Sharp, how are you? Hi, SpinSheet readers. How are you guys? Happy Friday.
Yes, good. Yeah.
We're supposed to rain all day, and the sun came out right again for our happy hour. I don't know. We're supposed to have 100 people watching us. We're going to have about 10.
I know.
So I want to say to our racers in the green room, you might want to hop on Facebook because it somehow tells your people on Facebook that you're watching live, and some more of your friends will come in. But for anyone who misses it, we'll pop this up on YouTube later so they can watch it after the fact in case they're outside in the sunshine. At least in Annapolis, the sun's shining. So,
yeah.
Anyway, so Sharp, what are you drinking?
Wow. We have really been in a kind of a lockdown quarantine kind of thing, and I know things are loosening up, but I just haven't made it. Just say I'm running low. All right. And so I am actually drinking a glass of wine, white wine, in my my mini mason jar, and it's a fine box. Yes, so
that's very.
Which I'm just going to say, don't knock this until you try it. It is fantastic.
The only thing that would make that a little bit more sailorly is if you destroyed the box and you were just carrying around, the bladder of wine.
Exactly. And which
for storage purposes. So yes. I'm a little fancier tonight. First of all, I felt like drinking out of my martini glass, even though it's not a martini. It's actually just a little shot of vodka in some Trader Joe's lemonade with a little garnish. Because I tend to not really get to drink my drink until the thing is over. I thought I'd at least show up with something fancy looking.
Well, I will say that you look fancy. You don't look like you've been in quarantine. I know what did you do something to your hair?
I went to Chez Molly hair salon, and I cleaned it up a little bit.
It looks fantastic.
Thank you. But hey, nobody came here to talk about my hair. They came here to talk about racing as a couple. So let's bring our first 2 couples on and get started.
Okay.
Ashley Love and Mike McNamara and Lindsley and Bill Carruth are our first 2 couples we're going to talk to, and then we're going to bring on 2 more couples. So let's start with Lindsley and Bill and Ashley and Mike. We'll bring them up and let's see what kind of drinks they have going for them tonight. Hey, there you are. I see Lindsley, while we were getting practicing, she was running out, so she had to make sure to fill up a little bit. So what are you guys having there, Lindsley and Bill? Audio issues.
No, that's my fault. I'm sorry.
Okay.
No names?
Oh, there you are. We hear you now. Is that a dark and stormy?
No, rum and tonic is the house drink here.
Lovely. That sounds very refreshing. Anyway, cheers and welcome.
Cheers.
Now, Ashley and Mike, you guys are becoming old pros in this program. I mean, Ashley came to she came to our Century Club one. She came on to talk. Gosh, I don't even remember what we were talking about last time you were on.
The old boats.
Yeah. Racing on a shoestring budget. That's right. And so now you're here talking about racing as a couple. What are you guys drinking?
Bud, variations of Bud. I have the Bud Seltzer, and he's got the Bud Heavy.
I've got a Bud Heavy and a SpinSheet koozie.
Well done. Well done.
Right there. If anybody needs to call in, right there. There you go.
I want to call our office where nobody is.
Nope. Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's not waste too much time just talking about drinking. Let's do a little talking about racing. I would like to start with Lindsley and Bill. I first got to know them. I believe this is how it went. Lindsley, you commented on something. I put something up on Facebook asking about. It was a Valentine's Day thing, and you responded, and I sent you a note asking if you would like to respond at greater length. And then we had that little piece about you guys. I'm not sure we were acquainted at all until that little article. And it struck me, first of all, because we love that picture of you two. The promo piece for this happy hour was, yeah, Lindsley and Bill on their boat, and it was happy. But I loved what you guys had to say about racing together. So if you just real quick could give us kind of a history of how you two started racing together, and if there's been a progression of boats and what kind of racing you do today. And then I'll ask the same of Ashley and Mike.
Why don't you start?
Yeah, so we met racing at the Downtown Sailing Center in Baltimore, Maryland, where we raced J22s. And we raced against each other for many years and vaguely knew each other. And then ended up racing together. And then a year later ended up dating. And 2 years after that ended up married. And our progression of boats was after that, after the J22s. Well, why don't you pick up?
So after the J22s, we were looking to move on. And so we were looking at Snipes and Flying Scots. And then somehow we wound up with the J105.
And the name of your J105?
Peregrine, which is an aspirational name. A peregrine is the fastest animal on the planet. It flies really fast. We have yet to make the 105 go quite that fast, but we're working on it.
That's okay. We all need something to aspire to. How about you, Ashley and Mike? I know a little bit of your story, I think, but maybe I don't know your full story. I know you were friends first, but you met through sailing too, didn't you? Why don't you tell us about how you first started sailing together and if there's been a progression of boats, what you're racing on now?
What was it? Maybe 5 years ago or so? I was sailing on a J70 called Tsunami, and Mike, you were on T-Dance Snake with his two other owners. And my boat decided that they were going to sell, and I was feeling a little homeless, so
that's when we snatched her up as crew, and I couldn't keep my hands off her.
Well, we sailed together for like 2 years on that boat before he finally asked me out.
All right. It was the Tartan 10 that reeled her in.
Yep. Our first date was on that boat. And I knew that the relationship was probably going to go well because we went out and double-handed the Tartan 10 just fine and got the sails down and flaked them even while before we got back to the dock on our first date. It was like,
yeah, she flakes on the first date.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And so you guys race just the Tartan 10 together now, or do you also race on a J70?
Yeah, we raced the J70 together all over the country, and then Tartan 10 all over the bay. And then I've dragged him out onto a 505 and some Etchels and some smaller boats too.
So Ashley and Mike, you guys were both SpinSheet Century Club members last year.
Yeah.
How many days did you spend together on a boat? Did you happen to tally which ones?
I counted it up. It was 43 that were shared.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. 43 days.
Actually, I get days put in my pocket basically for free, like the whole PBI Caribbean job that she had. I went down there for that, so it's pretty easy when you date another sailor to get those extra bonus days.
Yeah, he brings me out a lot. You know, sometimes when I might not otherwise, and same the other way. So we get each other out there.
Lindsley and Bill, you guys have any ideas how many days you guys spent on the water together last year?
We have no idea, but we did start counting last night this year. But
Oh,
this year
good.
it's hard to get to 100, I think. But,
Yeah,
but we
well,
started
I
a little.
aim to hit 100 this year, and it's going to be a challenge. I think I'm going to be paddling a lot in the rain.
Yep.
I'm going to hit it hard in June, July, and August. And, and I've heard you got to say yes to every invitation. So I intend to do that. So let me ask you this. I'll ask you first, Lindsley and Bill. What was your biggest challenge as a couple together on a boat, and how did you overcome it? And that might not be in the past tense. It might be an ongoing thing, and there might be a couple things. But
Yeah,
what do you
Ashley
think the
and Mike
biggest
set us
challenge?
up well for this. You want to tell them our worst part on a boat?
So our biggest challenge, and we have not overcome it, is flaking the mainsail.
And our crew that's listening, a number of them are probably laughing right now because they know we both hate to do this.
That's awful.
So is there anything you're working on right now together, or do you feel like you have a pretty good system together on a boat?
The flaking, not so great. We did, however, do the Gale Force Sailing Challenge last weekend, just the two of us. And we did it with Whitaker, and I got to say, it went really well. So I was impressed by that.
Good. I'm really glad to hear that. I think there are going to be a lot of couples double-handing this summer and the various races that come up. So I'm really glad to hear you guys are practicing that. How about you, Ashley and Mike? What are some of your issues on a boat? How have you overcome them?
Who gets to drive?
Yeah. We're both independently from each other. We're both competent drivers, and we're both competent tacticians, and we both like doing both roles. And so yeah, we fight over the tiller a bunch. But we found that it goes a lot smoother when one of us is driving, one of us is tactics, and we don't try to both do both because that can get a little hairy. If one just is listening and one is doing the decisioning and one's doing the tech, then we keep those things separate. We do better when we added those things up together.
Yeah. Well, of course, I want to know if you have any. I want to hear about a bad day on the water. You guys have a little squabble. I mean, 43 days. Come on, they couldn't have all been just beauteous. There had to be a squabble in there somewhere.
Really? So I think one of the funnier stories is, so he grew up in Oklahoma, sailing out there in the lakes, and has a lot of big boat experience. I grew up in the Barnegat Bay and dinghies. I got a lot of small boat experience. And we've been doing a lot of keelboat racing together. So last summer, I got him out on a 505 and got him out on trapeze as the girl.
Fun.
Time. He'd never been on a trapeze before. And your reaction? What was your reaction?
It was pretty awesome. Yeah, we were flying.
Yeah. And I because on that boat, if you're on wire, you're also the tactician, so you can just see everything. You're just like,
yeah,
you can see everything out here. But then, I didn't really talk him through how to set the spinnaker before we left shore. So it was blowing maybe 10 to 15, and I was trying to talk him through putting out. It's a double pole system on a 505, and he got the pole out, but then we ran over the spinnaker, so the spinnaker's sort of half in the water and won't go up. Meanwhile, the pole is like halfway out, and then the wind switched. I didn't do a great job driving, I guess. And the main flies over, and the one of the poles goes straight through the main. I mean, just like, and just rips this big hole right through the main. And we were still under control, still at that point, And then, so I guess I jibed the main back, tried to get the pole in. And while we're doing that, we flipped over. And good. And I think I went over the top. So he's the one that's in the water, trying to make sure the spinnaker's in and everything. And but a couple might have freaked out or gotten in a fight about this, but we were very methodical, just like, the check-in, are you okay? The steps that you go through when you capsize and things. Then we righted the boat eventually, and then the boat was full of water, and I asked him to bail out because he was up right where the little scooper thing is. And instead of scooping the water out of the boat, he just started scooping it directly into my face. And we're laughing hysterically the entire time. I mean, So, I mean, that could have turned out to be a terrible day. I mean, you did damage to a sail and, you know, you're flipping, you're wet, you're whatever. But our attitude was, we're safe. This is something that we can just prepare, and we're out on the water. So it's a fun day.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a pretty good disaster, as disasters go. So, Lindsley, tell us about your crew, what they know about you as a couple.
Oh, too much is probably the answer, and a whole bunch of them are listening. But no, our crew is fantastic. We like to joke that on the 105, he drives and I'm on the bow, and it's the 4 people between us who keep us married. And one of them in particular, Jack Bevere, is fantastic at translating the tirade that comes out of my mouth on the bow when the douse doesn't go well.
Lots
back
of
to Bill.
4-letter words.
They're 4-letter words, but Jack turns around and says, Bill, Lindsley says she loves you, and that's not at all what I was saying up on the We're all thinking about that. But no, our crew is our family.
That's great. How about you guys, Ashley, Mike? What do your crew members know about your relationship from sailing together? Or what would they say?
We're still trying to keep it from them. This is one of those on the down low. Don't tell anybody.
Just kidding. I mean, Todd, we sail a lot with Todd on the J70, and he's the one who actually, I remember standing at a Wednesday night race or a Wednesday night party, and Todd said, well, do you want to come start racing with us? So yeah, one of the crew members that we race with all the time is the one who made us, or I guess he matched us.
Yeah. Mike, that down low, not working.
Yeah, not working.
So
it helps out when you travel too, because you don't need as many rooms.
That's true.
So you guys seem to have things pretty well figured out as a couple on a boat, which would mean that you probably look at some other couples on boats who don't have it quite figured out and think, oh gosh, that's rough. Or, you know, hear them yelling at each other coming into the dock or going around a mark or something like that. Have you experienced some cringe-worthy moments with other couples and kind of wished you could teach them a little something about what you know? Or
we don't allow other couples on the boat. It's either one gender or the other, and no partner.
The crew is listening.
Well, I was thinking I don't recall that experience.
Well, so we've never had other couples on ours. We have watched other couples who have had stressful docking moments. Let's say docking is one of those times. And sometimes you do go, oh God, I hope that's never us. Luckily, Bill's really good at docking, so it hasn't happened to us yet. But
yeah, and if one thing, if you're going to sail with your partner, you have to be ready to forgive right away, and preferably find a way to good humor afterwards. Our rule from our Valentine's Day piece is that if one of us follows the other, we can exonerate ourselves by doing a 720, and that works on land. You can just sort of pirouette twice and it's all done.
I forgot about that. You told me that and I loved it.
I got a freebie for the weekend now.
Just got one in the bank.
Yeah. I heard you did it. Did I remember that you did that in traffic one time?
That was the first time he pulled it in our marriage, and from there it's been a great laugh. But no, it's always good to have a good laugh. So you got to remember it's a hobby. I mean, we all do this because we enjoy it and love it, and we are competitive, and it's more fun when we do better. But it's most fun to just be out there with people you enjoy being with and doing something that you love with someone that you love.
There is another path though to resolving crises. We had a horrible first attempt at med-mooring in Greece with a crosswind. And I managed to bobble around without the anchor being set between two boats and cut somebody's anchor line. And that was just the beginning of it. So we had these strange Frenchmen yelling at us. And when it was all said and done, I'm trying to figure out how to retrieve this stranger's anchor. Lindsley goes across the street to the grocery store and buys like 5 bottles of wine. And she gives one to each of the boats on either side. And I think we had one for ourselves. And that was important.
Booze always solves problems in sailing.
That's true. That's true.
How about you, Ashley and Mike? Do you ever see other couples who aren't behaving very well on the race course and you kind of wish you could give them a little lesson on something?
Well, so something that worked for us well was that we started off as we already had the racing thing and the communication down. We were already a crew members before we started dating. It might be harder, I don't know, to go from dating and then trying to do a sport together. But if you are, sailing is such a nice, flexible sport where you should have the conversation of what your expectations are of each other and what you want to get out of a regatta or a day or a year of sailing. We're both very, very competitive, extremely competitive. But we both want to be on the same, we're better when we're on the same team against somebody else competitively. If we're doing something separately, we're still like helping each other out because we want to be the best two that are up there. Like we're doing a lot of virtual regatta racing right now. And we kind of team race the rest of the fleet until we're 1 and 2, and then it's game on between us, But if one of you is a racer and one of you is a cruiser, maybe don't try to race together because you just have different expectations for what you want to do. We both really want to win, so we do race with each other. But if one's a racer, one's a cruiser, maybe you just end up you cruise together, and don't try to force the other person to be what you need them to do and what they're already not. They don't want to be.
Yeah.
We like to bring our love languages to the boat too a little bit. So there's that. My love language is teamwork, which works out really well.
Wait, what's your love language?
My love language is teamwork, which is, I guess, is a cross between quality time and acts of service. It's like kind of both of those bundled together. Mm-hmm. And he likes physical touch. So, between races, you kind of go back and like,
that's great. So real quick, I wanted to ask, and I didn't have this on the program, but as you're talking, I was thinking it might be helpful for couples who are maybe just starting their journey together on a boat to know what are some of the, typically with couples, the trouble areas on a boat, communication breakdowns on a boat, and maybe how can you proactively work on those areas before they become troublesome. Lindsley and Bill, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so one comes to mind, and it's to talk stuff through before you do it. I think is helpful. So we were going out last week in a pretty heavy wind, just the two of us out of the slip, and before you release the dock lines and you put we talked through how we were going to spring off, and often in the past, you have that conversation in the middle of doing it. And I think if you kind of talk it through and understand on the same page. And I remember in the middle, I was like, wait a minute, which side of the stanchion do I need the dock line to be on? And my brain just wasn't computing it. So it was really helpful to talk it through in advance. And then after we did the challenge, there was a call Bill made I didn't understand. And as we were just pleasure sailing, I was like, okay, let's talk that through because I don't get why you wanted to tack then. And it was helpful after the moment to talk it through. And then it turns out he actually had a good point, but I didn't understand it in the heat of the moment. Yeah.
That's an excellent point. That's and I think it's helpful with it anytime you leave the slip, really, right? Yeah. How about you, Ashley and Mike? Any sort of trouble? I mean, with you guys, it sounds like there might be a little competition, power or both want to drive thing happening, but with other couples, typically I hear, anchoring and docking are the two trouble spots. But on the race course, I know there, mark roundings can be very tense. I just wonder if you have any places you think might be trouble areas where people could work on communication before it becomes troublesome.
Well, I know I get really cranky when I'm hungry. She brings snacks, and we're good.
I have the same problem.
Everybody gets a little hangry,
Yeah.
I mean, with tacticians and skippers, their dynamic on the water is most tacticians, they're sort of figuring out the big picture and doing things between the marks. But when you get to a mark, you're handing it over to the skipper because you're not going to, they have the tiller, they have to make last minute decisions. And so the fact that he's a tactician and a skipper he's an excellent driver, and I like something that I learned early on when I was learning how to sail and getting into the Annapolis scene is that you always want to sail with people who challenge you and want to bring you up to the next level and everything. And I always feel like every time we go out, I've got something that we're working on or we're learning and we're doing it together, which is magic. We sort of have our debrief with the team between races and afterwards, but then we have our own kind of personal debrief too. If we're at a big regatta in Florida or whatever it is, we do our own little one between us as well, in addition to the one that the whole boat gets.
Well, I tell you, you guys are very lucky to race well with your partners. It's sort of a stereotype. I think that doesn't happen. And so here we have all these people that do it pretty successfully and seem to find passion in it. And I think that's really cool. Do you guys have any final words of advice before we let our other guests come on here? Any final words of advice to anyone who might just be embarking out on a racing journey together as a couple?
It's not for everyone.
What was that?
Don't try this at home.
It's not guaranteed.
And set your expectations low.
Yeah.
And you'll be pleased with whatever happens.
You'll have great communication then.
Yeah.
Well, and I also like what you had to say, Bill, or maybe it was Lindsley who said it, that you do this for fun, right? It's supposed to be fun. If it's not fun, then, well, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
But I'd like to add, too, that there are a lot of people in Annapolis, well, in the other sailing hubs in Baltimore, down in Hampton, there are a lot of professionals who could hop on your boat and help you through some of the trouble areas. And that Valentine's piece that we wrote that Lindsley and Bill contributed to, we had a couple of couples for the online version say, go get some coaching on docking your boat and lines and line handling and communicating about that. And if you're really struggling with it, get someone to teach you how to do it. It might save your marriage. So
trust each other.
Okay, we hope you guys will stick around. We're gonna put you in the green room for a while, and we're gonna bring a couple of other couples on here, so we have a little variety. And so we're gonna bring on Liz Biondi and Neil Ford from Hampton Yacht Club, and also Morgan and Joe Donahue from the Eastport Yacht Club.
And as we bring people in, Molly, I just want to remind, because we've actually had quite a few people join in late. Just so you know, this is being recorded. We're all to see all over the internets afterwards. So
yeah, that's right. We are going to put this up on YouTube. And if you're just tuning in, we're talking about racing, sailboat racing, of course, as a couple. And tonight's sponsor is Quantum Sails. Thank you for that. And we're going to bring on our next couple of couples. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Nice to see you. I greeted you beforehand, but Morgan and Joe from Eastport, and wait, Liz and Neil, you live down in Hampton, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And what are you guys drinking tonight?
Tonight I have a Fat Tire beer and a Hampton Yacht Club koozie.
Yay, Hampton! Yeah, and we were talking earlier that these two would have been in their Melgus 24 racing down the bay today if it weren't for a certain little virus that messed up everybody's spring. Yeah. So what are you drinking there, Neil?
Scotch.
Yes.
It's never too early for scotch.
Love that.
It's 5 o'clock right here. How about you, Morgan and Joe? What are you guys drinking?
What do you have?
I've been practicing my
audio.
Audio?
It's not us.
It's not us.
We can hear you.
Can you hear us?
Yep.
We can hear you.
Okay.
Can we hear you?
So I've been practicing my cocktails during this quarantine, and tonight I went with kombucha and vodka mix with a little topper of soda water.
I'm just doing dark and stormy.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Nothing fancy, but Pusser's mugs.
All right. I approve of the Pusser's cup there. That's very very sailorly of you. A little boat show time here. So that's
Pusser's though, I'm afraid. There's Jay Pekorski saying hi. Hello, Jay. Sorry. Shout out to the chat. Viper Sailor.
I have a little bit of a delay in talking to Morgan and Joe. So if I look baffled there for a minute, it's because your lips are moving and then your sound comes to me. So so I'm going to ask you guys to speak first. Can you give us a brief history of how you started racing together, and if there was a progression of boats, and what kind of racing you guys do now?
Yeah, so I'll start this one off, Joe. So Joe actually was an experienced sailor before we had met. I'm fairly green still, and we met. He'd already done Bermuda and been sailing locally in Annapolis. And soon after, we moved to Hawaii together. We were lucky enough to get on a couple boats out there and do a few races, but mainly our wind sport where we started to have to work together was kiteboarding. Joe had been kiting for years and years and taught me, which was a really good prep for sailing because, you know, when you add in shark-infested waters, you can kind of handle, you can kind of handle a tough windy day out here in the bay. So, yeah.
Yeah. I guess, that was it. 2014. I think in the spring that we met, I got her out on a J80 out of EYC just to kind of screw around with a friend. And then we did a couple of beer cans. And then when we came back to Annapolis, we really kind of jumped into the sailing. The EYC and everyone obviously knows the Annapolis sailing community is just super easy to jump into. So it was nice. I always think it's awesome because even if you have no experience, it's very easy. There's just always a spectrum of people, and you can find yourself on a boat with someone who's been sailing for 40 years and knows everything and is really talented, like especially really like everyone else on this chat except Morgan and
except us.
But it's an easy way to jump in, and that's what Morgan and I did. So it was good. We were on a couple of different boats pretty quick, and it was fun.
Yeah, shout out to the J30 fleet that definitely has taken us under their wing. Suzy Q, was my first introduction to racing, and that's where I started to learn, and we started to learn together. And then now we own with our friends, the Genses, Ryan and Lucy. Shout out to you guys. We now own Hello Mary Lou together. So that's the boat that two couples on a boat that I have to say, I think we've done pretty well, the four of us racing together.
Yeah,
that's great. Two couples. There's an added thing. Maybe someday we should talk about partnerships on boats. Huh?
Yeah, definitely.
That's great. And Liz and Neil, why don't you tell us about your journey together? As I recall, maybe you guys started off sailing together in college. Is that
I would say we sailed against each other in college. No, well, we were on the same team, but we didn't actually sail together in college. But that's where we met, and we were both kind of grew up sailing. And then as a couple, we started with a J24, racing a J24 locally here, and Rocket J, and a little bit in Annapolis also, and we sailed that boat down the bay a few times together. And now we're
let that sink in for a minute. J24 sailed down the bay. That's very old.
We were not the first.
We're not the first.
Because we had, my mother actually worked for Dan Winters like a million bajillion years ago, and Dan Winters I think was one of the first ones to race and win down the bay on a J24, and of course we never won it, but we got second one year.
Yeah.
And it's a different experience on a J24. It's fine for the skipper. The skipper is easy. It's nice. It's wonderful. But for the crew, it's not very much fun.
So what are you racing on now? Tell us what you're up to these days.
We are racing. Well, right now we're waiting patiently for racing to start for the season, but we've been racing our Melges 24 Danger Paws together.
Mm-hmm.
In our last season, we also sailed with another couple, so that was something that Joe and Morgan, we share that experience with you guys, and it's been a lot of fun. We actually kind of taught our crew, who was a couple, how to sail through the last sailing season, which was a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And they were gamers too. They had never sailed at all before they started with us, and the first regatta they came out with us was down the bay. So it was everything else I think has been pretty pleasant for them.
Nothing like a 150-mile beat down the bay your first time out of the gate, right?
It was down.
What a August 24. That's pretty impressive. And because you guys aren't going to brag about it yourselves, allow me to brag about you for you, that anyone who follows the Southern Bay racing scene, when you're looking at the scores, you just look at number one and it's danger pause, danger pause, danger pause, danger pause, danger pause. It gets sort of like kind of feel bad for everyone down there. You guys win everything. You really excel and stand out on that scene. So we're honored to have you here talking to us a little bit here. Let me ask you this. What has been your challenge? I'll just start with Liz and Neil. What has been your challenge as a couple on a boat together, and how have you overcome it, or how are you still overcoming it?
Oh, probably we're both very hard-headed, extremely hard-headed. We're very competitive, and I think a challenge. We've had a number of challenges as far as like experiences and whatnot that we've done. But I think a general challenge is navigating, just in general. Neither of us are all of that meticulous about navigating, and sometimes we get it wrong, and then that's really becomes a challenge, and probably our hardest things to overcome. Not like complex navigation, like, we need to go from A to B, but like rounding mark, XYZ to starboard or whatever it said on the race instructions. We're not very good at that. And that generally brings a lot of stress once we didn't know where we were going and lose a race because of it.
Have anything to add to that, Liz?
It's always my fault.
No, I feel like we have a pretty good front of the boat, back of the boat dynamic. But I do think sometimes that the skipper thinks that things can happen faster than is humanly possible. I think we always tend to figure it out, which is good.
Yeah. How about you, Morgan and Joe? Any challenging areas for you as a couple on a boat?
I think for us, I kind of touched on this earlier, that I'm green. So that can be pretty intense for someone like Joe, who has more experience, and we're a married couple, that I'm leaning on him more than I would in normal everyday life, really looking to him whether in the daily, when there's barely any wind and we're just practicing, or in a race and we're rounding a mark. Joe's done a great job of keeping his cool, knowing that my communication response is much better when he's just speaking to me in that level-headed tone. So while it's probably our biggest challenge, we've also, I think it's been a really positive experience for us. We tend to do more of our fighting on dry land. So
do you have anything to add to that, Joe? Any challenges to overcome?
I think actually kind of piggybacking on the disparity in experience, it's kind of starting when I was teaching her to kite in Hawaii, and then once we got back and we were sailing, like I can remember times in kiting when she'd be offshore and she'd like finally get up and go. And if you know anything about kiting, you are absolutely by yourself. And if any of your gear goes bad, you are floating in basically. And I was just constantly kind of nervous about her, because once she finally got up and running, all of a sudden she's going out like a half mile over, reef, and being concerned. But then once we transitioned back to Annapolis and we were sailing, we had this thing where she was really looking forward to trying to learn bow, and we got in a couple of flights off the water because she was like, I should be learning bow right now. I should be. And I'm like, look, you can learn it, but you need to like watch somebody do it. Some of this stuff is complicated. Plus, working bow on a J30, especially with a pole, symmetrical. There's times when it's dangerous, and you really do have to just keep. I think new people to sailing have to recognize that it can be, there's a lot of precaution you need to take, and trying to, especially when you have experience, trying to show someone who doesn't have experience, trying to teach them to the kind of respect for certain situations and stuff is a little tough and a little bit hairy. But I can't say that. I would say that's probably our biggest challenge, was just trying to making sure that we're all doing everything safe and having fun.
Someone in our audience asked how you're able to keep your cool, Joe.
I'm generally a very chill person, so it's just comes naturally.
I think we keep some cocktails on the boat. So
that helps.
We don't, we're not taking anything too seriously.
We actually came across a couple, and they were in the J30 fleet, and they will remain nameless. They're a couple who sails. We were doing a point to point. It was either Oxford or St. Michael's last year, and they didn't bring any booze because they were trying to save for weight reasons. And I was like, and 4 hours into the power boating down because there was no wind, they were coming up to us like, "Hey, can you guys give us some booze?" And we're like, "No, how do you not have booze?" And so,
we did give them a couple beers, but in the end, I mean, everybody take a cooler with you guys.
The baby bears. How about you, Liz and Neil? You guys ever have a good blowout on a boat?
I don't think we've ever had a blowout at each other. We usually are blowing out, just trying to go faster, keep the boat going, making sure we're doing things as fast as possible and talking through what's happening.
Making really bad tactical decisions. We've had some questionable discussions about making excellent tactical decisions. Maybe tacking too much. Maybe I was me tacking too much. It could have been, and going to the wrong side of the. There's been a number of tense discussions about tactical discussions, but that's pretty much it.
Do you ever see other couples squabbling in boats, and you wish you could give them a little piece of advice?
Yeah, that's always tough. It's don't yell, don't yell.
Yeah, I feel like we've been pretty successful because we don't really yell at each other. I mean, we'll have disagreements about what we should be doing on the water during a race. If something, like for example, something breaks, like if the sail tears or something, there'll be some yelling, but we're never really yelling at each other. I don't know.
It's tough. I think some folks said it much better than us earlier, is that anytime you walk into a situation like this, and especially if there's a disparity in skill, or if there's someone that's already experienced in racing, and you see this with crew a lot as well, and all of a sudden now you're putting somebody in a completely unfamiliar situation, and now everybody's competitive when they're racing. You can be more or less, but everybody is at least somewhat competitive when they're racing, and that's when your emotions are stronger. So if you're going to combine those two things, you're going to have somebody get upset. So don't do that, because you cannot possibly expect that you're going to bring somebody, and we bring new crew, people that have never sailed, people that have only sailed a tiny little bit. We bring people like this all the time, because it's much more interesting that way, honestly, because now people can go out and learn to sail and have some experience on what being on a race boat is like. But if you say, hey, I expect you to perform like, the same expectations that I have for Liz, for example, who is very technically and competent, then they're immediately going to get destroyed, and it's never fun for them. But if you now apply this to your partner, then boy, you're going to create a big old problem, because it's just then you're getting too many things complicated at once.
Can you tell us about one day on the water that didn't go so well for you guys?
Oh yeah, so we have a couple of boats, a number of boats, and one of them is a 47-foot Bowman Corsair. So it's an old 72. It's a boat that I grew up on, sailing on, and living on. And it was down in Florida, and about 2 years ago we brought it up. And we didn't with my meticulous planning about exactly what we needed to do over the course of this, 7 days that I allotted to bring us from Jacksonville to here, and the boat hadn't run in 2 years, and she was sitting on the hard, and so that included getting her in the water prepped. So we were on a bit of a time schedule, at least on my time schedule, and I'd looked at the weather and I thought, oh well, it'll be fine. I'm a little overconfident in what weather we can manage, and so we end up getting out of the river in Jacksonville on the outgoing tide with about 3-4 knots of current and 25-30 knots on onshore wind. Ooh. And that's one of the more fun experiences of changing out the number 1 to the number 4, basically, that I've had. Hang on, Jib. Getting buried in the bow. I mean, just know this. Working into this was really a series of really bad decisions that we made in order to do this delivery, especially in the way that we did it. And what it ended up is that on big boat sailing is different than little boat sailing. Well, Liz got very seasick, and so now Liz is seasick, and there's just the two of us, and we're headed offshore on this boat that hasn't sailed in a long time. And I know the boat; it's the boat that I grew up on, so I know it really well. But still, it's a little bit different when you're in that kind of environment, and you're trying to manage your partner and your boat, and you have significant actual challenges going on with the real sailing. And so that was one of the most stressful days I think that we've ever had sailing together, coming up there. And it ended up not just being a day. I think it was about 48 hours.
Oh gosh.
Through a front line coming up through off of North Carolina that it rolled off. It was just really it was just a really bad weather window that I decided to pick during this time. Yeah. But it was fun. It was, it was class 2 fun.
So Liz is navigator now?
Yeah, I'm much. So it's funny because you talk about things that couples kind of have. I guess our biggest thing too is, I would say, weather. And I don't know if it's actually been because of that situation, but that's one of those things. Like for us in the Melges 24, you can't reef the sails. You can't take down the rigging and put up a smaller sail. So I'm very cautious when we're out there to make sure that we're keeping track of the weather, making sure that we're not putting ourselves in a bad spot. Because
I may be less conservative.
Yeah. How about you, Joe and Morgan? Of course, I'm going to ask you guys all what's great about racing as a couple, but let's ask you just one bad day. Share us one bad day you had on the water.
A bad day we had on the water. I think we probably haven't been sailing enough together.
I was going to say, and I think we probably check the wind and the weather and are like, we're too green to do this.
No, I mean, well, I can say kiting, the worst day you had, you ended up downing your kite outside of the reef on Oahu, and she spent about an hour floating in. And when you have a cut, when you're getting towed by a piece of cloth that's just sitting on the water, like human trolling, it's shark infested. It's just an ugly situation to be swimming around out there. So that was an upsetting day, but sailing, we're in it for trying to get that first really bad day, hopefully in the next couple of years.
Yeah. Well, how about let's end on a super positive note. Tell me what's great about racing as a couple, or one super memorable day that you had that you can tell us about. Liz and Neil?
Super memorable day.
Well, I'd say first off, I'm not even really that interested in going racing unless I've got Liz on the boat. It's really not. I mean, it's interesting, but we've done that a lot. So
I say it's kind of our thing. It's what we love to do, and we love to compete on the water. And I think it's something that we love to do together. So I think almost every time we go out there, we have a great time, and we love being out there with our friends and just being on the water.
And
I
racing.
guess I'll say that it's great. We've gotten. I just said earlier, Ma, we've had a really good season with Rocket J. I mean, with Danger Paws last year. That was a lot of fun. It's really great to be able to work together and kind of do the best you can and actually see yourselves improving as a team on the water. That's been great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great to hear. How about you guys? Remember one beautiful day you spent on the water together, or what's great about racing as a couple?
I think the best day that I remember, and it's kind of a funny and probably a cautionary tale too. We were coming back from the Miles River race last year, and it was like one of those mornings everyone's kind of hungover, and we're cruising down like the Eastern Bay, and we're not going fast at all. There was barely any wind. We weren't doing the race back, and Morgan decided that she wanted to take a swim. And so I explained to her she needed to dive. We have a ladder, and I was like, you need to dive ahead, out and forward so that the boat, you can get the ladder. And she just took her sweet little time. She dove off and she did a little twirl. And I'm like, Morgan, get back to the ladder, get back. And we're under sail going downwind. And so she's like, stop, you gotta stop. I'm like, what do you mean stop? I can't, no one's good. And so we had a whole crew. I think your sisters were there. There were a couple of people there. And at one point, Morgan's like, she decided to turn onto her back and started kicking to try to catch up to the boat because she was starting to get out of breath.
I needed to take a break. I had been kicking for like 10 minutes at that point.
It was pretty cold. It was probably getting cold. But we had one of our crew members who we don't sail with as much anymore, unfortunately. Vinny, he did like a Baywatch. It was like a
I'm coming for you.
Pretty rad dive in. He like ripped his shirt off and ended up actually rescuing Morgan. Although I don't know that she would characterize it that way. Yeah.
But I will say, while cocktails are great, this is an example of maybe we had started too early.
Sadly, I don't think we were drinking at that point. But
I was.
It is there's a lot of fun out there. Be safe. Make better choices than us.
That's great. Well, I think it's last call, so maybe let's make me disappear and bring on our other couples and see if they have any parting words of advice for any other couples who are sailing. I see that I didn't see any questions come in from the crowd. If there are any, feel free to put one up right now. But I saw a comment here. It was Jeff Ewens, and he said that he found it great to actually treat his partner as a crew member, not so much as a spouse on the boat. And then he commented, I sense with a little sarcasm, that he was really good at that. So you guys have any parting words for anyone sailing as a couple?
I don't know. The motto on Hello Mary Lou is just, we're not out here to get a scholarship. So just enjoy it. We're here to have fun, right? As competitive as we like to think that we are, at the end of the day, we're trying to have a good time.
Yeah, true.
How about you, Lindsley and Bill? Oh, they seem muted.
Uh-oh, muted.
I think I'm probably muted too.
There they are.
Sorry, I can't hear
For
them.
both of you, and try to do that. I like to push a little bit. Lindsley is the one who's sane and reels me back in from hoisting the kite when it's 35.
And I'm the navigator and points out where it's shallow.
Oh yes, and just be prepared. You will run aground. It's going to be your fault. Deal with it.
And if Oz aboard and your wife just said, turn, it's shallow here. That's the way life is.
How about you, Ashley and Mike?
Yeah, I mean, it's not for everybody. So a lot of people are really jealous of us because we've got this really cool thing going. So, just try not to let it get to your head.
But you don't have to if you both are sailors, you don't have to sail on the same boat. There's plenty of people who stay in the same fleet but different boats or different boats. I mean, the 43 days on the water together, but the other
67.
Thank you. We're on different boats, you know. So we each have our own thing, and we have the things that we do together. So I think it's a good balance to do that, because you don't have everything hanging on one thing. Like if this doesn't work, I lose everything. You know that you have other relationship with other crews, and not
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes we sail with each other.
Yeah.
And sometimes we sail with other people.
Oh, it's an open.
It's an open
Like a swingers arrangement. I mean, that's totally cool. I'm not judging.
They're not married yet.
Right.
We're only dating, so.
How about you, Liz and Neil?
Well, I think it's we love it. Sailing is a sport that takes a lot of time and a lot of commitment, and if you can do it with your spouse, then it just makes it that much more enjoyable
And easier.
Yeah, it's easier to find crew because you always have that extra crew.
Literally, we sail just the two of us quite often because we never got quite around to finding crew.
That's great.
You've always got someone to go with.
Well, thank you guys. Cheers.
Cheers.
Sharing your knowledge with us. And Joe and Morgan, congratulations on your new crew member.
Thank you.
You guys
Yeah.
have a brand new crew member for a 12-week-old baby named Marty, and congratulations on that. I look forward to meeting him in person.
Thank you.
Thanks,
for
Molly.
having us, Molly. Thanks, Chris.
Happy weekend, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks for you guys.
Thank you.
All right, tune in next week.
Sharb, are you coming back?
Well, I am. I'm just figuring this whole thing out. It's not,
Well, every week it's a new adventure.
Hold on.
Anyway, in the meantime, I really enjoyed what these guys had to say. I'm rather envious of them. These guys have it figured out pretty well.
I think so.
I wanted to hear about more fights. I wanted more blood and guts.
I was ready for some, and we didn't get it. But
no, we didn't get it.
Oh well.
Anyway, they're doing something right, especially the folks down in Hampton. They win a lot of races,
Yeah. I can. I was just thinking about my wife and me, and I don't know if we could actually do the racing thing. But we're not super competitive, but the cruising thing, absolutely. Anyway, well, Molly, I thought this was a lot of fun, and I think you did a great job. And I want to thank everybody, all our guests, obviously, for doing this. Before we sign off, we got to do the thank you to our sponsor again, to Quantum Sales. Thank you very much for sponsoring this. All of our guests are in the green room, and I just have a feeling there's going to be a party in the green room tonight. I don't know.
Oh, there's a party in the green room every time.
It's ridiculous. I know. Okay. Well, folks, thanks very much for joining us. It is Memorial Day weekend, and in order for you to tune in next week for our next happy hour, it's important that you stay safe and stay healthy, so please do that. Next week, we actually know what we're going to be talking about. It's actually going to be a special feature as part of our Start Sailing Now. And that is the section of the magazine, if you're not familiar with it, where we highlight an individual that has gotten into sailing later in life. They didn't grow up sailing, their family didn't sail, and sort of how they got into things. And one of our guests is going to be Jerry Lee, who's a really...
And he went from total beginner to being a boat owner. So he has a lot of good advice for people, and he has a Facebook following. So he's kind of an interesting young man, and we might have a special guest on there too. So if you know anyone who's new to sailing, I hope you'll tune in and share it on your Facebook page so that people who are interested in getting into sailing can get fired up.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be fun. So please tune in then. Until then, safe and happy holiday for the weekend, and take care. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you on the water.
Don't miss another SpinSheet video. Subscribe to our channel today.